Across all mythologies, the concept of the mother goddess has been a prevalent feature, and imperative to both the creation of gods and men alike, as well as being imperative to the ancient cultures who worshipped and revered such deities, sometimes even more so than the more popular heads of the pantheon. As is the case across most mythologies, the mother goddess is quickly overshadowed by her offspring, those who prove to be not only more popular amongst ancient communities, but also prove to be more complex, more relatable, and perhaps more human. It might be said that this is the reason why many of the mother goddesses in ancient mythologies do indeed take a back seat, for their children are illustrated as being more vibrant and spirited. Yet it might also be said that the recession of the mother goddess is symbolic of the real relationship between mother and child, in that, over time, the child grows into a more individual character, and the mother segues into old age. The same dynamic could be said of Ninhursag, though where she is not necessarily overshadowed by her godly children, she is certainly overshadowed by her other more notable creation, that of mankind. Today's video is brought to you by Epic Loot Jewelry. Epic Loot make these really awesome jewelry pieces that are based on historic symbols of Nordic culture. Whether you're into bracelets, rings, or even watches, there's more than a few eye-catching items to represent your inner Viking. Each piece is carefully crafted and made with such attention to detail that many of the designs look like they've been plucked directly from the Nordic sagas themselves. From runic symbols to the mythological elements, such as Fenrir, Mjolnir, and Odin's Raven, each item tells a story that is infused with an enchanting feel. But if you're not into jewellery, perhaps you might be more interested in some of the really cool tankards that Epic Loot have available, those that look like they might very well have been pinched from the halls of a Nordic king. The tankards are certainly my favourite item from the Epic Loot store, and you'll find the build quality and sturdiness of these mugs to be perfect for slamming together over a feast and shouting "Skål" as you knock back your ale. You might also enjoy Epic Loot Store's incense burner, which is built in the shape of a Viking boat. Not only does it give off the perfect Viking vibes, but it sure makes for eye-catching decor, in addition to burning incense for a relaxing scent. There's so much to choose from over on epiclootshop.com, and I have no doubt that anyone who's a fan of Norse mythology will have no trouble finding some excellent items to enjoy. Right now, Epic Loot are offering free shipping on all items. Just click on the link in the description below and use the discount code EPICFS when you check out. The mother goddess of the Mesopotamian pantheon, known as Ninhursag, adopts more of a significant role when compared to the likes of other mother goddesses across other pantheons, in that she not only birthed the gods, but was also instrumental in the creation of man. Additionally, it would appear that despite being recognized as the mother goddess, Ninhursag was by no means the first mother goddess to the people who worshipped her. Instead, she was believed to have replaced the primordial goddess Namu, who was primarily worshipped as early as the dynastic period, from the year 2600 before the Common Era. The replacement of gods and goddesses was not uncommon to the Mesopotamians, for the popularity of a particular deity could surge or decline depending on varying factors, from wars, politics, or the preference of one deity over another by whichever king was in power. This would see some gods and goddesses inherit more responsibilities, or become conflated with another deity, or even dropped completely from the pantheon. It is this conflation of deities that interests us most when talking about Ninhursag, for there were many deities like Namu who served the same purpose as Ninhursag, but were ultimately joined or replaced by her due to the shifting of beliefs and or political power. For example, Ninhursag was once known as Damkina, or Damgaununa to the Sumerians, and as well as motherhood to the gods, she was associated with fertility and childbirth. Meanwhile, to the Akkadians, she was known as Belet Ili, which was believed to mean Queen of the Gods. Outside of this, the etymology of her name, Ninhursag, was believed to have meant Lady of the Sacred Mountain, which was believed to have stemmed from the poem known as Lugali. In this epic, the god of war Ninurta defeats both the demon Asag and his army of stone warriors. He then uses the corpses of the fallen warriors to build a mountain, which he builds to pay tribute to his mother Ninhursag. In some accounts, Ninhursag's name was originally Ninmah, but after wishing to commemorate the mountain of corpses with the same name, Ninurta asked his mother to change her name to that of Ninhursag. With this, she became the Lady of the Sacred Mountain, and some propose that this was the site of her temple, the Ika Temple located in the region of Eridu. Her previous name, Ninmah, which was believed to have meant Great Queen, may also have belonged to various minor goddesses, or other mother goddesses from various regions, and this tale may have been penned in an effort to unify the mother deities under one name. Of these minor deities, meanwhile, she may have gone by the name Nintad or Ninta, which was believed to have meant Queen of the Birthing Hut, or by the names Mark, Ninmark, and or simply Mama. But whilst Ninhursag was believed to have been the mother of the gods, she was not the primordial mother. Indeed, this role fell to the sea goddess Namu, who was associated with the first generation of deities and the creator of the heavens and the earth. She was believed to have given birth to Anu, the god of the sky and heavens, as well as Ki, the goddess of the earth. Now, some have theorized that Ki, or Kishar, was actually Ninhursag, and that originally they were the same figure. This is made more comprehensible when you consider that there is no historical evidence of Ki being worshipped, nor did she even appear to have a cult. Furthermore, as Ki, or Kishar, was believed to have been the original Mother Earth, or at least the figure who inspired such a concept, this would also be true of Ninhursag, who would then be recognized for her association with childbirth, pregnancy, fertility, creation, and nurture. As a deity responsible for such things, it was believed she was primarily invoked by mothers or women who were pregnant, those who hoped to be awarded guidance or comfort during their 9-month cycle. In this, various beliefs see Ninhursag caring for a child whilst it was still in the womb, by ensuring it was nourished. The origins of the world can vary in the Mesopotamian pantheon, depending on the region, people, and time period, but an early Sumerian myth, known simply as Enki and Ninhursag, recounts the story of how the world began. It all takes place in a great garden of paradise, known as Dilmun, and here Ninhursag is seen as a young and spirited goddess, who is on something of a hiatus after having spent much of her energy nurturing parts of the earth. It is here that she is stumbled upon by Enki, the god of wisdom and the waters, and it is said that the two fall in love. Together they produce a daughter named Ninsa, the Sumerian goddess of plants and vegetation. After her birth, Ninhursag blesses the child with an enchantment that accelerates her growth, and she matures into a woman in just 9 days. The newfound family appear to be content with their little life in paradise, but when spring comes around again, Ninhursag returns to Earth and continues to nurture the plants, animals, and people, as she had done before. Enki and Ninsa, however, remain in Dilmun. As time passes, Enki begins to miss Ninhursag dearly. In fact, he misses her so much that he begins to see Ninhursag in Ninsa. Suddenly infatuated by his daughter, on the account that she reminded him of Ninhursag, Enki seduces her, and she becomes pregnant with their daughter Ninkara, the Sumerian goddess of mountains. Like Ninsa before her, Ninkara also demonstrates an accelerated growth and matures into a woman in 9 days. Enki, who still longs for Ninhursag, soon began to see Ninkura in the same way, believing her to be the splitting image of his sorely missed wife. So he ditches Ninsa and seduces Ninkura, his granddaughter, and she gives birth to a daughter named Utu, the Sumerian goddess of weaving. For a time, this relationship actually works for Enki, but before long, he realizes that she too is not Ninhursag. With this realization, he leaves the paradise of Dilmun and returns to Earth. Distraught by his abandonment, Utu calls upon Ninhursag for help and explains to her what had happened. Disgusted by what she hears, Ninhursag instructs Utu to remove Enki's seed from her body and to bury it in the earth of Dilmun. So Utu does as she is told, and 9 days later, several plants grow from the earth where Enki's seed had been buried. Sometime after, Enki returns to Dilmun with a servant, and upon seeing the plants, Enki stops to investigate them. His servant appears to deceive him in telling him that these plants are edible, and so without hesitation, Enki consumes the plants. In some versions of this story, Ninhursag is enraged to find that the plants have been devoured, and so she curses her husband before leaving him. This sees him become struck by intense pains, those which are linked to childbirth, and after having consumed his own semen, it is suggested that Enki becomes bloated and pregnant. With no avenue for which to disperse his children, he remains locked in labour for a lengthy time. As the pain becomes more and more unbearable, it becomes clear that Enki is dying, which causes all the other gods to attend his deathbed. They mourn his imminent passing, but they also realize the irony in that the only person who could heal him was Ninhursag, she who had cursed him. But a fox soon appears, the fox being sacred to Ninhursag, and goes to fetch Ninhursag in the hopes of saving Enki before it's too late. Appearing to him, Ninhursag decides to forgive her adulterous husband, and draws the pain he experiences into herself. With this, she then succumbs to the pangs of pregnancy, and then delivers 8 more children to him. Enki recuperates and offers repentance, for both seducing their daughters and for consuming the plants. After having forgiven him, the pair work in tandem upon the earth to both nurture and create. There's a certain dichotomy that's established in the character of Ninhursag from this story alone. First, we understand her to be exactly what one would think a mother goddess should be, someone who creates and nurtures. We see that before resting upon Dilmun, she had been busy populating the earth with plants, trees and wildlife, but also that she had been busy in raising these elements, caring for them, and ensuring that they were sustainable. Whilst you might argue that there is some neglect on her behalf, in that she leaves her daughter in favour of returning to Earth, it could be seen as a testament as to how much she loved and cared for Earth, choosing it over her own offspring. Yet she's also seen to be reliable, and not completely alien to her daughter, or her offspring, for when Utu cries out to Ninhursag for help, she immediately answers, and guides her descendant on how best to proceed. This brings us to the second part of her character, that which can be described as vengeful. We know that she was angry with Enki for having slept with their daughter, but she appears to be even more enraged when she later returns to find Enki has eaten her plants. As you might imagine, the Earth Goddess was a deity who valued life, whether this be in the form of a person, animal, or even a plant. So to see a god, her own husband no less, kill the plants to sate his own appetite, it warranted repercussions. It's interesting that Ninhursag does not seek to punish Enki for his affairs, but only inflict such consequences upon him after he has eaten the plants. It could be said that for Ninhursag that this was the final straw, but it might be better suited to her role as an earth goddess that she was more upset over the plants, for where her daughter and granddaughter got to keep their lives, the plants were not so fortunate. Her vengeance upon Enki is swift, and without hesitation, and having essentially condemned him to eternal labour, she delivers one of the worst possible punishments upon him, showing us the full extent of a more resentful persona. We are also privy here to Ninhursag's power, given that she is able to inflict certain death upon one of the most prominent gods of the pantheon. Enki was considered to be one of the Holy Trinity in Mesopotamian mythology, along with Anu and Enlil. So to see him so utterly overcome by an effortless spell by Ninhursag sure highlights her potency. Notice that none of the other gods are able to heal Enki, and even they recognize that Ninhursag was the only deity with such power and knowledge to reverse such an infliction. In another tale involving Enki, known as Enki and Ninmah, where Ninhursag's name reverts back to Ninmah, or perhaps was written before her name change in the Lugali, we see the decline of the mother goddess, who, despite having the upper hand over her husband in the last story, appears now to lose it. This story may have been penned as a result of the shifting attitude towards goddesses, and to reflect the times during the reign of the 6th king of the First Babylonian dynasty, Hammurabi, who favoured the male deities over the female ones. The story begins with the narrative that the younger gods are made to be labourers, those who are responsible for the general maintenance of the world. In these duties, they are forced to do all kinds of jobs that they deem menial, including digging canals, repairing damages, and caring for harvest fields. With these burdens, the younger gods become restless and dissatisfied, especially when this prevents them from pursuing their own work. So they make a petition to the supreme god, who is depicted as Enki in this story, though Enki does not appear to be empathetic, and indeed seems more inclined to rest after having created the world in the first place. But Enki's mother, Namu, is moved by the cries of the younger gods, and she brings their concerns to her son, forcing him awake from his slumber and forcing him to act. Annoyed by her persistence, Enki begrudgingly agrees to help the younger gods in their duties by creating another set of beings that will work alongside them. These were of course to be the very first human beings. It is both Namu and Ninmah, as well as several other fertility and creation goddesses, who begin to breathe life into human beings, those which were believed to have been fashioned out of clay by Enki's original design. The creation of humans is a success, and the younger gods are relieved of their labours. To celebrate the event, Enki holds a great banquet, and much food and drink is consumed by the gods. But Enki and Ninmah are seen to drink quite intimately together, and after the pair have become drunk, they challenge each other to a contest. Ninmah decrees that Enki's human creations will be subject to her will, and whilst he might have designed them, their fate will be decided by her. But Enki retaliates, telling her that it doesn't matter what fate she decides for a human, because he will always improve upon it. So to test this, Ninmah makes a man whose hands are frail, deeming him to be incapable of living with such an impairment. But Enki goes ahead and improves the man's life by making him a trusted treasurer to the king, for his hands would not be able to steal. So Ninmah proceeds to make another man who is blind, but Enki gives the man the gift of music, and thus makes him a highly sought after musician. The same pattern continues, with Ninmah creating what she believes is a defective human, and Enki utilizing this defect to benefit the individual's life. In one last-ditch attempt to outsmart Enki, Ninmah creates a being that has neither male or female reproductive organs. So Enki places this being in the king's service as a eunuch, and modifies him so that he will watch over the king with sworn allegiance. Frustrated with Enki's resourcefulness, Ninmah concedes the game and throws the clay on the ground. But Enki retrieves it and reminds Ninmah that while she had fashioned the creatures with imperfections, he had improved them. Therefore, it was now his turn to fashion a creature with imperfections, and it was her turn to try and improve it. With this, Enki creates a man that is afflicted in every area of his body. He is unable to eat, stand, talk, move, or really even function. Deeming this creation as a lost cause, Ninmah discards the being of having any real use, and cannot come up with a way in which to improve such a creation. Unfortunately, the text beyond this point is damaged, and so it is not known what Enki does to improve upon this creation, or whether there is a greater moral which is taught. In any case, the story concludes that Enki is the winner of the contest, and by demonstrating wisdom that outsmarts Ninmah, he is deemed as her superior. In this story, we not only see a pivotal moment for Ninmah in that she is overshadowed by Enki, but also a more flawed version of her character, one that isn't necessarily congruent with the Mother Earth persona as seen in the previous story. Here, she is much more confrontational in her initiation of the challenge against Enki, but also she is much less concerned for the life of the humans. In this story, the humans' lives appear to be merely tools in which she uses to prove Enki wrong. Previously, she had been seen to be nurturing of life, and dedicated much of her time to improving upon her creations. But here she appears to construct humans with the intention of making them defective, also that she can have the upper hand over Enki. Furthermore, she is seen to give up on these humans once Enki has found better uses for them, and appears to outrightly give up on Enki's final creation, a being whom she can find no use for. Unlike Ninhursag, Ninmah here seems to view life not as sacred, but instead as expendable. Between herself and Enki, Enki certainly appears to be the character that one would want to root for in this confrontation. The story serves to show us not just the multifaceted nature of these deities in general, but also how stories were written at the time to push or pull the gods, depending on their popularity at the given moment. At one point in time, Ninhursag was the mother goddess who nurtured her creations, and was so powerful that she could decimate Enki and leave him for dead. At another point, she was less wholesome, and far more indifferent to her creations, using them as a means to win an argument and ultimately coming up short. In the Akkadian epic known as Atrasis, sometimes known as the Babylonian story of Utnapishtim, Ninhursag is seen yet again to be fashioning humans out of clay. Though this process is given more detail in this story, as she mixes in the flesh, blood and wisdom of the god Welu, he who volunteers himself so that the humans will have an additional advantage. The story follows the same plotline as Enki and Ninmah, in that the younger gods petition for help in carrying out their daily duties. However, it continues on to show the great flood that Enlil unleashes upon the humans, after they grow so numerous and make too much noise. When the humans are drowned, with the exception of Utnapishtim, who Enki saves, the gods were said to mourn for them. However, it is mentioned that Ninhursag in particular cried the hardest for the humans, for their demise could be seen as the death of her children. According to some scholars, it's not such a stretch to say that Ninhursag probably was, at some point, regarded just as highly, if not higher, than Anu, Enlil and Enki, those who, as aforementioned, were considered to be something of a holy trinity in the Mesopotamian pantheon. As the Great Mother of the Earth, it stands to reason that Ninhursag would have presided, at least for a time, over god, king and commoner, given that their creation, let alone their birth, was in a sense facilitated by her in the first place. Put simply, man may have owed his harvest, shelter, protection, riches, or family to the other deities, but he owed his life to Ninhursag. Moreover, she was called upon by women during a time of their greatest need, childbirth. And so, it makes sense that mothers of the time would have felt indebted to, or at least immensely grateful for Ninhursag after successful labour. Such belief and gratitude would only increase her popularity and reserve her a place of great honour amongst ancient communities. As always guys, if you've enjoyed today's episode on Mesopotamian Mythology Explained, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this. Until next time.